Who's
town officials, whatever, at least anybody new in the room.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Cape Cod Commission Regional Policy Plan Subcommittee hearing here in Falmouth for July 30th, 2025. This hearing is being held to give the public an opportunity to comment on the draft 2025 Regional Policy Plan. If anyone wishes to speak, at the appropriate time, I will ask you to raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. You'll be recognized when it's your time to speak. This meeting is being recorded for the purposes of creating minutes. If anyone else is recording this meeting, please identify yourself. So we'll begin with a roll call of the members of the subcommittee. Tom Wilson, here. Peter Oken.
Here.
Richard Roy.
Here.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Here.
Dennis Brevenson.
Here.
John Drewley.
Here.
All right, thank you. The Regional Policy Plan Public Hearing. The Cape Cod Commission Regional Policy Plan Subcommittee will conduct a public hearing to obtain public comment on the draft 2025 Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan. The Regional Policy Plan is intended to present a coherent set of regional planning policies and objectives to guide development throughout the Barnstable County and to protect the region's resources. We'll begin with a staff presentation, and Christy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Christy Senatori, Executive Director with the Cape Cod Commission. And thank you for attending our public hearing on the 2025 Draft Regional Policy Plan. We are holding a number of outreach opportunities this week and continuing into the public comment period around the draft 2025 RPP. But first, as you may be familiar with, we have a project timeline here. You can see that we began this process to update the RPP as we do every 5 years or so back in the fall of 2024 with a series of sub-regional public hearings. We held a number of focus groups, and I'll go into some of the detail there in just a moment. We conducted a resident survey. We held a number of stakeholder meetings throughout the spring. And we're at the point now where a draft has been completed and we put it out for a 60-day public comment period. During this same time frame, we also worked with our subcommittee, held a number of meetings, and the draft that you have before you today has been approved by the subcommittee for release for public comment. So I'm going to start by reviewing the draft chapters of the Regional Policy Plan. We'll briefly introduce these. All of this information can be found on our website. All the detailed data and information in each of the chapters is there for your review, and I'll highlight some of the key elements that are contained within the plan in just a moment. So the first chapter discusses the region. It discusses the entire 4 subregions. And what you'll see in this new draft is that we've made some minor tweaks to some of the descriptions, and we've outlined the Commission's roles and responsibilities. So Chapter 2 really identifies the evolution of the Regional Policy Plan. As you know, we've had a Regional Policy Plan in place since 1991, and we update that plan every 5 years or so. And in 2018, we did a major overhaul of the Regional Policy Plan with a focus on context-sensitive planning and goals and objectives for looking at our regulatory program within the Commission. In 2021, we also made some amendments to the RPP to incorporate more consideration for climate mitigation. This chapter also discusses the elements of the update process, including some of the outreach opportunities. And here you'll see that focus groups that we held over the winter months were held in these 5 issue areas: so transportation, economy, housing, open space, and climate change. And we'll get to a little bit later in the presentation, the Commission's done a significant amount of work in each of these issue areas over the course of the last 5 years, but we did want to make sure that we were incorporating significant feedback from experts in these fields as we drafted the Regional Policy Plan. This chapter also summarizes the results of the resident survey. So what you're seeing here on this slide is a snapshot of some of the information that's contained within the survey results. We had about 1,200 respondents to the survey, and over 60% of those respondents indicated that their towns need more affordable ownership and rental housing. 84% strongly supported or strongly supported the Canal Bridges replacement project, and about 91% cited environmental quality as either important or very important in deciding whether to live or maintain a home on Cape Cod. We also asked a question in the resident survey about water quality, and 63% of the respondents to the survey have noticed a decline in pond water quality over the course of the last 10 years, and 42% noted a decline in coastal water quality. So certainly wanted to make sure that we were understanding the perception around water quality of the Cape residents. And on the right side of the screen here, you'll see some of the top concerns that were identified and articulated by respondents. Many of our residents identified that affordable housing, coastal erosion, traffic congestion, sea level rise, and pond water quality were identified as a moderate or serious problem, not only now, but over the next 5 years as well. This chapter also includes the public and stakeholder meetings that I identified earlier that we've held over the course of the last several months. We had in-person meetings really as we went through this process to update stakeholders and get some feedback on some critical elements of the draft regional policy plan. So chapter 3 remains the regional vision for Cape Cod, and what you'll see here is that regional vision remains the same as it was in the 2018 plan. It's the vision for the future of Cape Cod as a region of vibrant, sustainable, and healthy communities and protected natural and cultural resources. We did make some minor tweaks to the growth policy. And so here you'll see that the growth policy currently in this draft regional policy plan for Barnstable County identifies that growth should be focused in centers of activity in areas supported by adequate infrastructure and guided away from areas that must be protected for ecological, historical, or other reasons. And development should be responsive to context, allowing for the restoration, preservation, and protection of the Cape's unique, and we've added here, and finite resources while promoting economic, environmental, and community resilience. So certainly we wanted to make sure that there was an acknowledgement that the resources on the Cape are finite, and certainly considering that within the growth policy for Barnstable County was a critical element to add to this regional policy plan draft. The next chapter is chapter 4. This is the Cape Cod systems chapter, and the systems have changed significantly. It was updated really with more current data and information, really making sure that we captured everything that had happened in our region and changed within the communities over the course of the last 5 years. So this still describes the natural, built, and community systems that comprise the Cape Cod region, but with additional information and data to support it. And chapter 5 is now our key regional priorities. So in the last regional policy plan, the key regional challenges were identified in this chapter, but really making it more action-oriented and forward-looking, we now have these identified as our key regional priorities. And so really these are focused around protecting our open space and our natural resources, restoring and protecting coastal and freshwater quality, mitigating climate change and adapting to its impacts, preserving cultural and historic resources, increasing housing attainability, planning for and providing necessary infrastructure, and strengthening the economy. So certainly we would identify these as our regional priorities across the region, and this chapter really focuses on these regional priorities. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chloe Schaefer, who's our chief planner, to get into some of the goals and objectives and some of the subsequent chapters within the draft regional policy plan.
Thanks, Christy. Good evening, everyone. Chloe Schaefer, chief planner with the commission. We're moving on to chapter 6, so our goals and objectives. These goals and objectives really serve to guide both our planning work as well as our regulatory review. This chapter is organized into the 3 systems seen in chapter 4, those natural systems, built systems, and community systems. Within each of those are specific issue areas, each of which have their own goal and supporting objectives. So I'm going to start with the natural systems with water resources. The goal here being to maintain a sustainable supply of high quality drinking water and protect, preserve, or restore the ecological integrity of our water resources. There are 5 objectives under this goal. The first dealing with groundwater quality, the second dealing with our freshwater resources, the third with our marine water resources. The fourth objective focused on managing and treating stormwater to protect and preserve our water quality, and then the final objective here focused around groundwater withdrawals. Next is ocean resources. The goal here to protect, preserve, or restore the quality and natural values and functions of our ocean resources, and 3 objectives under this issue area. The first, dealing with development and where it's located to protect those sensitive resource areas. The second, making sure we're protecting and preserving our ocean habitat and the species that depend on it. And then the third here, also protecting our human use areas and vistas as related to our ocean resources. Next is wetlands resources, the goal being to protect, preserve, or restore the quality and natural values of our inland and coastal wetlands and their buffers. The first objective here, protecting wetlands and their buffers from changes in vegetation or grade changes. The second objective, dealing with changes in hydrology, and also noting here, including those associated with stormwater discharges. Previously, there was a separate objective under this area dealing with stormwater, but there was a lot of overlap, and really what it was dealing with was potential changes in hydrology, so that's been streamlined into a single objective now. And then the third objective here remaining focused on promoting the restoration of degraded wetland resources. Next is wildlife and plant habitat, and the goal being to protect, preserve, or restore wildlife and plant habitat to maintain the region's natural diversity. There are 5 objectives here. The first, maintaining the habitat that we have, the wildlife populations and species diversity found in the region. Next, looking at restoring degraded habitats. The third, really focused on vernal pools and their buffers and protecting and preserving those critical areas. The fourth is managing invasive species. And then the fifth, dealing with best management practices to protect wildlife and plant habitat from potential impacts of development. Next is open space. The goal here to conserve, preserve, or enhance a network of open space that contributes to the region's natural and community resources and systems. And the first objective here, protect and preserve natural, cultural, agricultural, and passive recreational resources. The addition here of agricultural in response to much of the feedback we received throughout this process to really help elevate and call out more explicitly the importance of agricultural resources in our region. And also added to this objective here is passive here to help really clarify that when we're talking about recreational resources in the broader context of open space, it's talking more specifically about passive recreational resources. The next objective is to maintain or increase the connectivity of open space. And then the third, really looking to provide protected open space appropriate to the context throughout the region. Moving on to the built systems. First, here we have community design, and the goal here to protect and enhance the unique character of the region's built and natural environment. The first objective focusing on building and site design and really promoting building and site design that is context sensitive and complements the character of the Cape. The second focused around minimizing newly disturbed land, minimizing impervious surfaces. And then the third one more specifically dealing with infrastructure projects and avoiding adverse visual impacts from those on our scenic resources. Next, under coastal resiliency, the goal here to prevent or minimize human suffering and loss of life and property or environmental damage resulting from storms, flooding, erosion, and relative sea level rise, including but not limited to that associated with climate change. The first objective here is really focusing on minimizing development and risk in those areas vulnerable to flooding. And previously this really was focused on just the floodplain. That was the term used there, but now using areas vulnerable to flooding, recognizing that there are areas outside of kind of the FEMA designated floodplain that are vulnerable or will be vulnerable to flooding in the future, and so making sure that we are addressing those challenges as well. The second objective, planning for erosion and accretion. And then third, restoring coastal resource areas to promote their natural beneficial functions, and also in the ways that they contribute to resiliency along the coastline. Next, under capital facilities and infrastructure, goal here being to guide the development of capital facilities and infrastructure necessary to meet the region's current and demonstrated future needs. We added here current and demonstrated future needs to make sure we are addressing our challenges that we're facing right now, but also recognizing challenges we may be facing in the future and what infrastructure is necessary to address those. The objectives here, the first one now really focused on the siting and design of infrastructure projects, ensuring that they're efficient, sustainable, and resilient. And then the second objective focused more so on what services that infrastructure is actually providing and that it's meeting regional needs. Next, under transportation, the goal remaining to provide and promote a safe, reliable, and multimodal transportation system. And the first objective remaining focused on safety, eliminating hazards. The second objective more focused now on specifically healthy transportation and multimodal accommodations. And now a separate objective really explicitly calling out vehicle trip reduction strategies that was previously combined with another objective. The fourth objective now clarifying a little bit too, providing and promoting an efficient and reliable transportation system by reducing congestion and really explicitly calling out the reducing congestion aspect of that. Under energy, the goal remaining to provide an adequate, reliable, and diverse supply of energy to serve the communities and economies of Cape Cod. And the first objective focused around renewable energy development, the second around resiliency of the energy generation and delivery systems, and then the third focused on energy efficiency and conservation. Under waste management, the goal to promote a sustainable solid waste management system for the region that prioritizes reuse and diversion and protects public health, safety, and the environment. And prioritizes reuse and diversion was added here to really emphasize those aspects and underscore their importance as we look to the future. The first objective focused on that reducing waste and waste disposal, and then the second one focused on supporting an integrated waste management system. And then the last issue area under the built systems is climate change. This was previously climate mitigation, but based on feedback we've heard throughout this process, broadened it a little bit to incorporate climate adaptation as well as addressing climate mitigation. So the goal now being to increase the region's resiliency to climate change impacts and mitigate climate change by supporting and contributing as a region to the Commonwealth's greenhouse reduction goals. The first objective still focused on low or no carbon transportation alternatives. The second, promoting electrification and low or no carbon technologies for building systems. The third also still focused on carbon sequestration and other practices for that's appropriate to the context. And the fourth, focusing on low or no carbon energy generation. But there is now a new fifth objective within this area, focused on promoting strategies to help address climate change-induced impacts in the region that might not be addressed through things like coastal resiliency, so other things we might see like wildfires or extreme temperatures. And then in community systems, the first issue area being cultural heritage, the goal here to protect and preserve the significant cultural, historical, and archaeological values and resources of the region. The first objective focused on our buildings and development patterns and protecting and preserving those kind of character-defining features of how the region is built. The second focused on our archaeological resources and assets and protecting and preserving those. And the third, preserving and enhancing public access and rights to the shore. The fourth objective here focused on protecting and preserving our traditional industries such as agricultural and maritime development and uses. Under economy, this was revised significantly to really align better with our comprehensive economic development strategy that we just completed last year. So now the goal is to promote a resilient, inclusive, and diverse regional economy that protects and builds on Cape Cod's competitive advantages, aligning with the vision in that SEDS. The first objective here focused on supporting both emerging businesses and industries, but also our core traditional businesses and industries in the region. And then the second objective focused on supporting our workforce, enabling workforce participation, and supporting entrepreneurship. And then finally, housing. The goal here being to promote the production of an adequate supply of ownership and rental housing that is safe, healthy, and attainable for people with different income levels and diverse needs. And 4 objectives here still. The first really focused on promoting an increase in the types of housing we have in the region, offering more variety and diversity and choices there. The second, promoting an increase in our year-round housing supply. The third, looking at our existing housing stock and making sure that we're also protecting and improving what we have already today. And then the fourth objective here, now including attainable housing, so increase in affordable and attainable housing, recognizing there's tremendous need in the region for both. Chapter 7 is coordinated regional and local planning. And this chapter really describes some of the regional planning initiatives that have been undertaken since the last regional policy plan. Specifically, the climate action plan is new, as well as the regional housing strategy and the freshwater strategy. We also have updated or new regional transportation plans and a new comprehensive economic development strategy, and then certainly provides an overview of many of the implementation efforts that have been underway for the 208 plan. This section also discusses the local comprehensive planning requirements for Cape Cod Commission certification and how those align with the regional policy plan, and those regulations were also updated since the last regional policy plan. And then Chapter 8 remains the Cape Cod place types, and there are still 8 different place types. These are really a framework for understanding the region in terms of places that have similar built or natural characteristics, and so ranging from our most sensitive, least developed areas, our natural areas, up to those more intensely developed areas like our community activity centers or industrial activity centers, and still provides a vision and different strategies for each of these different areas moving forward. Now I'm going to hand it over to Erin Perry, one of our deputy directors.
Thanks, Chloe. And so I will pick it up at Chapter 9, which is Regional Regulatory Review. And by and large, the Regional Regulatory Review chapter is similar to the 2018 Regional Policy Plan. It continues to contain the information on the role of goals and objectives of the RPP, the role of Cape Cod place types in regulatory review, the role of technical guidance. There is an updated and expanded section on the role of sensitive resource areas, and then we continue to have information related to waiver and flexibility, as well as RPP consistency, and the probable benefits and detriments determination that is part of the regulatory review. The one change here is really shifting some of the information that was previously contained in the local and regional kind of coordinated planning chapter, that information on planning tools available through the Act. So these are planning tools like growth incentive zones, districts of critical planning concern, and so that content is now located in this chapter, given its kind of relationship to the regulatory process. Chapter 10 is recommended actions. In 2018, Chapter 10 contained performance measures, and so this chapter in the draft 2025 RPP kind of recognizes that performance measures are included in the many issue-specific regional plans that we have in place today. And that this section is now really more focused on recommended actions. Recommended actions are a critical element of the regional policy plan because it is an opportunity to articulate and define what our priorities are for the coming years. And so we have identified recommended actions in each of the 3 categories, natural, built, and community systems, and I'll just touch on these briefly. So under natural systems, we've identified 6 recommended actions. We recognize and heard through the process that given the limited land area left across the Cape that isn't already developed or protected, that there is a real need to focus and prioritize areas for open space, especially around those areas that have sensitive natural resources. So development of a regional open space plan is a recommended action under the natural systems category. We also have development of an advanced dynamic groundwater model. So this is something we heard both through the regional policy plan update process as well as through our recent work to develop the freshwater strategy, that there's an opportunity to better understand groundwater, develop a more sophisticated model. We've had some conversations with the United States Geological Survey about this, and this could both inform our freshwater and coastal water quality planning and give us a better understanding of groundwater across the region. That could contribute to advanced planning, aquifer planning, advanced aquifer protection planning, which again is something we heard kind of the sentiment on through the regional policy plan process, but was something we heard quite often through the freshwater initiative and development of the freshwater strategy, really planning kind of more holistically for freshwater, coastal water quality, and groundwater resources. The state of Massachusetts is prioritizing implementation of the Massachusetts Farmland Action Plan. That's something that staff have been engaged with, and we anticipate continuing to be engaged. When you look at the Commonwealth as a whole, I think the Cape Cod may have a lesser fewer agricultural resources than other areas of the Commonwealth, but it's critically important that we maintain those areas and ensure that they continue to be productive across the Cape. So that's something that we'll be prioritizing in the coming years as well, and collaborating with the state on. Developing model wetland bylaws for pond and buffer protection. Again, this is something we heard through the regional policy plan process as well as the freshwater initiative. And it can contribute to implementation of improved bylaws at the local level by developing tools and resources like model bylaws. So this is an area where we'll be focusing some attention. There are some existing resources that we've developed recently, our pond buffer guidance, that can contribute to this work as well. And then finally, under natural systems, the state is due to update the ocean management plan. They are reconvening the Ocean Advisory Commission. This is an area where staff has participated previously and anticipates continuing to participate, and it will be appropriate for us to look at the regional ocean management plan as this state ocean management plan is updated. There are 7 recommended actions under the built systems category. Several of those relate to climate resiliency, and so I'll touch on those first. Advancing actions that reduce risk in the coastal floodplain. This really builds on work that we've done over the last several years to develop a suite of model bylaws and regulations that can be implemented locally and are protective of both the natural and built environment, as well as work that we've done with all 15 towns on the low-lying roads analysis to identify those vulnerable roadways and develop conceptual strategies for addressing those vulnerabilities. So that is something that we'll be continuing to do, and I believe is a priority of all of our communities as well. Supporting local climate action planning and implementation is very much connected to that, so certainly advancing those low-lying roads designs and working toward implementation, but then also supporting local climate action plans. This is something that over the past several years we have been working in different capacities with communities, whether it's helping to update greenhouse gas emissions inventories or to conduct more of a holistic planning process to develop a local climate action plan. So these will be a priority as well. And then there are a number of other, I'll touch on supporting post-disaster planning initiatives. So this is definitely tied and kind of goes hand in hand with the climate planning that has been done to date. Despite significant local and regional planning to address the impacts of climate change, we know that we'll continue to be vulnerable moving forward. And so we need to be thoughtful and prepared in the event of a major disaster. And especially around priorities for redevelopment. So supporting post-disaster planning initiatives will be a priority as well, and this is something we heard through the planning process as a priority of the region. There are a number of other efforts included here, including supporting efforts for collaboration on waste diversion and disposal options. The Commission collaborated with the county to develop a number of kind of studies and documents to inform this work several years back, and will continue to ensure that that data and information can support collaborative efforts and discussions that are ongoing across the region. Supporting implementation of the Cape Cod Vision Zero Action Plan. This is one of our newest regional plans, just recently completed, and certainly prioritizing and supporting safety improvements to roadway infrastructure and transportation infrastructure of all types will be necessary to support successful implementation of that plan. And then touching on some of our kind of major infrastructure assets, continuing to support replacement of the Bourne and Sagamore bridges, and providing input and feedback on that as the process moves forward, is something that we have been doing and we will continue to support into the future.
And certainly developing a regional capital plan to identify where there may be efficiencies, where we can better collaborate across town boundaries and with our state and federal partners is a priority as well. This was something that was included in the last regional policy plan, and we have begun to develop a scope of work and a framework for that, and something that we'll be prioritizing in the coming years. And finally, under community systems, there are a number of recommended actions within the community systems category. The first three that you see along the top are really things that we have been doing and we need to continue to do. So maintaining a comprehensive economic development strategy, which not only provides that vision for the economy across the region, but also enables us to access resources and technical assistance from the Economic Development Administration, which wouldn't otherwise be available to Cape Cod communities without that SEDS that is maintained. So the most recent SEDS was adopted in 2024, and we will continue to work towards implementation. Continuing to expand our understanding of underrepresented histories. So this is an effort that has been undertaken over the last couple of years to really better document and share information on underrepresented histories across the region. We'll continue to expand that inventory and make that information accessible, and that, along with kind of the work that we have historically done and will continue to do to support new and updated historic inventories, is really critical to informing planning moving forward. So better understanding of our history and our past and our cultural resources can help us better prepare for the future. And then the last four you see here along the bottom are really tied in large part to addressing our housing challenges. Certainly encouraging local regulations that protect historic and archaeological resources goes hand in hand with the work that we do on historic preservation. Identifying opportunities to reuse and utilize existing historic structures to also address our housing challenges is a priority, and something that I know many of our communities are working toward as well. Supporting zoning changes for greater housing opportunities. The Cape Cod Regional Housing Strategy identifies local zoning recommendations for all 15 towns, many of which I know our communities are working toward implementing, and this is something that Commission staff have and will continue to support. Supporting implementation of the Affordable Homes Act more broadly, but also specifically as it relates to those communities who have been designated as seasonal communities, and working to provide the resources, whether that's model bylaws or technical assistance and support, to ensure that those communities can access the opportunities that are available to them through that designation will be a priority. And then convening a funding and financing working group for housing initiatives. Quite a bit of work has been done by the Commission and others to better understand potential strategies and opportunities for addressing our housing challenges. A key element of that is identifying appropriate funding and financing mechanisms for implementation. And while that is something that the Commission can't necessarily do on its own, we can convene the appropriate stakeholders across the region and collaborate with partners at other levels of government to ensure that we are identifying and thinking about what the best funding and financing resources are to support that work. And so that is it for the draft regional policy plan. I will just touch on, there are a number of other supporting and kind of companion documents and resources that we're also looking at and are potential areas of change to support implementation of the regional policy plan moving forward. And so we are continuing to look at review thresholds as well as the technical guidance and the mapping that supports implementation, and in particular the regulatory review aspects of implementation of the regional policy plan. So that is work that is ongoing, and there will be more to come there. And then finally, we are hopeful that we'll hear from you all today and hear input. You're welcome to share that input verbally through the public hearing. We also have comment cards in the back that you are welcome to provide your comments in writing, and there is a box to put those comments in. And if after the meeting you would like to share additional information, there is an opportunity to submit written comments, and the information and ways in which you can do that are located here on the slide. The draft regional policy plan and all of the supporting materials and the information on future hearings, which are occurring tomorrow morning virtually and in the afternoon or early evening out in Eastham in person. All of that information is available on the website, so you can feel free to access that as well. And thank you very much. I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, Erin and Chloe and Christy. We now get to the public testimony part of the hearing, and if there are any local or state officials who would like to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none, if there are any members of the public who have comments on the regional policy plan update, please raise your hand. Please.
Thank you for this in-person meeting on the Upper Cape area. It's convenient for us. And thank you for everything that the commission and especially their staff do to help inform the whole discussion on the Cape of development and actually have regulatory levers that they can pull from time to time. There's a lot of emphasis on housing. And here in the Upper Cape, if you live in Bourne, there's a lot of emphasis on transportation. Here in Bourne, we are also a MBTA community. I don't know if we're the only MBTA community on the Cape. Maybe Hyannis is one too, I'm not sure. But that puts stronger emphasis on housing. Even you might think of us as the town that has all the transportation issues. But we're building multi-unit housing as fast as anybody and permitting it and zoning for it. There's a problem, which is the various multi-unit housing laws, regulations, and promotional regulations require and encourage multi-unit housing, but they don't require the infrastructure surrounding them to support that. And we're finding that in Bourne, that our housing is running past our infrastructure. And the particular infrastructure as an MBTA community, we're supposed to be building housing within walkable distance of our transit hubs. We don't have a rail transit hub yet. Our transit hub is bus. We have 2 major park and rides for commuters going long distance or anybody going long distance by regional carriers. There's very poor or no infrastructure to connect the housing that we have to build within walking distance of those to those facilities. We've had some serious bad pedestrian accidents, people crossing major roadways trying to get to bus stops. I would like to see something in the regional policy plan that's kind of a direct wire neuron connecting between the housing policy and the transportation policy. It sort of comes under your community's functions. When it says that to make sure there's infrastructure to go with the housing, specifically bicycle pedestrian infrastructure, what I see is something possibly tying into Mass DOT's Healthy Transportation Directive, which requires any roadway project that's going to do a certain amount of work on the roadway to bring the roadside pedestrian and bicycle facilities up to certain standards. The idea is all roads eventually get rebuilt. It's a long, slow process, but putting in bike paths is expensive and doing it incrementally makes sense. So as we build these multi-unit housing, and especially as we build workforce housing, which presumably is going to have kids and possibly 2 working parents who aren't around to drive the kids everywhere they need to go. How are we going to provide and connect those housing units to the rest of the community? So I think that's something that really is the type of thing that can be addressed in the regional policy plan. It's a little bit unique to Cape Cod, which is why I think it belongs in there. I'm sure it's happening everywhere, but we really have a lot of growth in multi-unit housing now. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other members of the public who would wish to speak? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Want a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you all for your time. We appreciate your feedback. Thanks for coming.